The Stone Zone, with legendary Republican strategist and political icon and pundit Roger Stone. Stone has served as a senior campaign aide to 3 Republican presidents. He is a New York Times best-selling author and a longtime friend and advisor of President Donald Trump. As an outspoken libertarian, Stone has appeared on thousands of broadcasts, spoken at countless venues, and lectured before the prestigious Oxford Political Union and the Cambridge Union Society. Due to his 4+ decades in the political and cultural arena, Stone has become a pop culture icon. And now, here's your host, Roger Stone.
Welcome, I'm Roger Stone, and yes, you are back in the Stone Zone. Here to help me break down the political news of the day, the publisher and editor-in-chief of the Illinois Review, Mark Vargas.
Roger, always an honor to be with you. Thank you.
We start with some breaking news here, Mark. The Senate Judiciary Committee has just advanced Pam Bondi's nomination to become the next Attorney General of the United States with a tight 12-10 vote. The vote will now go before the entire Senate. Before we begin, here's a quick commercial message. Okay, folks, the countdown is on for the new administration exposing the entire pandemic. Most know that a large sum of people's health was entirely negatively impacted by global coercion. With severe side effects or experiencing long COVID, check out the natural solution formulated by Dr. Peter McCullough in collaboration with the Wellness Company. And they just leveled up their original detox formula for $30 less. Introducing this new 3-in-1 Ultimate Spike Detox, conveniently consolidated into one capsule with 4 times more nantokinase, 500 milligrams of bromelain, and 500 milligrams of turmeric root extract. Nattokinase, an enzyme researched for its anti-clotting effects, will work to break down spike proteins. Combined with bromelain and curcumin, it provides a potent blend for detoxification and cellular support. Crafted with 100% natural ingredients, Ultimate Spike Detox is backed by research offering effective support for your cells, natural repair, and recovery. Experience the only formula approved and used by Dr. Peter McCullough, a top freedom-fighting and truth-telling doctor who risked it all. So go to twc.health/rstone and use rstone as your code to get 10% off plus free shipping. Again, that's it. And remember, use the code rstone to get 10% off. Get back to that pre-code feeling today. All right, Mark, we have a lot coming up here. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has testified before the Senate today. That will happen here in a bit. We have a quick video on that.
We have massive health problems in this country that we must face honestly. And the first thing I've done every morning for the past 20 years is to get on my knees and pray to God that he would put me in a position to end the chronic disease epidemic and to help America's children. That's why I'm so grateful to President Trump for the opportunity to sit before you today and seek your support and partnership in this endeavor.
This is, I think, Mark, among the president's very most important appointees. I'm a strong supporter of Robert Kennedy. Last week, he sent me one of his kind of trademark narrow ties, which I wore for the show. He liked it. He told me he thought it looked great. Our focus today really is on January 6th and the pardons. And Enrique Tarrio, the recently pardoned head of the Proud Boys, joins us momentarily. But first, we have a video for you.
Enrique Tarrio Proud Boys leader, convicted of seditious conspiracy, now pardoned by President Trump, receiving a hero's welcome here at Miami International Airport. Arrivals here, he's embracing his attorney, he embraced his mother, his fiance. We heard cheers in the distance as folks who have caught wind of his arrival here at Miami International Airport are pleased to see that he's now a free man and have clapped. There are, of course, people who don't agree with this pardon. But we have not heard anyone protesting that yet. Let's see what else he has to say.
This is our great honor now to bring in a good friend of mine, Enrique Tarrio. Now, it's very interesting. On August 20th of 2021, Reuters reported that senior FBI officials said that their investigation had shown that Roger Stone and Alex Jones were not involved in any conspiracy regarding January 6th. In fact, they said there was no conspiracy regarding the events of January 6th. However, Enrique Tarrio, the head of the Proud Boys, was later indicted for seditious conspiracy. Now, this was interesting to me because he was indicted on the basis of a document sent to his Telegram channel by an FBI informant, a document that he never even opened. They claimed at trial that he edited a document that he never even opened. Of course, his lawyers were not allowed to introduce the fact that the document came from an FBI informant. Joining us now, the charismatic leader of the Proud Boys and my friend, Enrique Tarrio.
Thanks, Roger. Thank you for having me on. And just a point, I think you made me cry a little bit for the first time since my release with that video. I had never seen that video. I'm elated, you know. Sorry I'm getting emotional, but it was an amazing day. My release, I thank the president. And to get into what you said, yes, everything that you said is true. Like, it's always been true. I was indicted for a document that I didn't open, and I do have to correct something. They did say that I edited the document, but that was an FBI agent that was testifying on the stand when we brought the forensics. The person that was testifying for forensics for the FBI, she stated that she knows that I didn't open it because it doesn't show red. It doesn't have the, if anybody's used Telegram here before, you'd see that you have 2 check marks, and it did not have 2 check marks because I didn't see it. If I were to forward that, the question now remains, if I forward that, or if anybody sends you that document, are they going to get hit with a charge of seditious conspiracy? And I think the answer would be yes.
Yeah, it is interesting because I think your trial, your persecution, your prosecution is a case study of political weaponization. It's an unprecedented political persecution, in my opinion, of injustice wielded as a weapon by the Biden administration for a political narrative. This is, I think, a real testimony to your faith, to your endurance, to your perseverance. They put a lot of pressure on you to begin with to try to entrap President Donald Trump. You had visited the White House, although I don't think you met the president, but they really wanted to get you to testify that the president was aware of some conspiracy on January 6th that never even really existed.
Yeah. So beyond the fictitious story that they made, and it's a really cool story. It's a really cool, like, fiction story that George R.R. Martin can write, where they wanted to connect me to Donald Trump, and they knew there wasn't no connection. They knew there wasn't any seditious conspiracy, but they put the paper in front of me. They're like, "This is what you got to say, and if you say this, then we'll schedule a bond hearing for next week. We'll release you, and we guarantee you that you won't do a single day in jail, in prison. And you know what? Like, not only was it not true and fictitious, there is no way, and you've taught me this, Roger, that this stone don't roll. So
Yeah, it's virtually identical to what they did to me. So they stormed my home on the morning of January 25th of 2019. The prosecutors in my case, Aaron Zelinsky, who's still an assistant U.S. attorney in Baltimore for those at the Justice Department looking for people to fire, lied to two different federal judges, said they had probable cause to charge me with treason, conspiracy against the United States, counterfeiting, that's one of my favorite ones, money laundering, lots of rubles, uh, uh, unauthorized access to a government computer, aiding and abetting a conspiracy before and after the fact, mail fraud, and wire fraud. The two judges ordered unfettered access to all my emails, text messages, phone messages, and so on. And of course, they found evidence of none of those crimes because none of those things happened. By July, they called my lawyer down to Washington and they said, your client's going to die in prison. And he said, well, but the jury hasn't even been selected in his case yet. And they said, don't worry, the jury's going to hate his guts. But here's his chance. We're going to give him one chance. All he's got to do is testify against President Trump. Here's what we want him to say. And they pushed a piece of paper across the table. And of course, it was not only was it lies, but I'd already taken 3 separate polygraph tests using the polygraph firm that is used by the FBI. And it would have been apparent that all those things were lies. And of course, like you, I refused to lie. That just incensed them even more. So I know the feeling because I've been through it. You said this publicly. While you were incarcerated, they tried to get you to incriminate me in events that never actually happened. Tell us about that.
So, I mean, they wanted the whole array of anybody that was close to the president. Obviously, including the president alone, and you were implicated in that because they know we were friends. They didn't have any messages or anything because there's nothing nefarious to talk about. There's absolutely nothing nefarious to talk about, and they wanted me to roll on you too. They wanted me to roll on my co-defendants. They wanted me to roll on a couple of other people, but we didn't. We went to trial like you did. We have a lot of things in common now. But it's we're taught in like middle school and high school when they used to have civics, which maybe we need it back, but about this justice system and this blind, justice is blind, and the scales, and it's all bull crap. It doesn't exist. This system is meant to imprison political enemies, and the way they do that is they get one person, they roll. That's how they got me. They got somebody they told somebody that they were going to spend their life in prison, and they're like, hey, we need you. They slid that same paper just with my name on it, and they're like, we need you to say this. And he was weak, and he said, yeah, fine, we'll do it. Other than that, the only evidence they had is that document I never opened. So this isn't a system that's new. This is a system that's meant to do this. It's been crafted to do this. There is no justice in this country, and I truly believe that it needs to be torn down and rebuilt from the ground up. And I'm hoping with the confirmation of Pam Bondi, hopefully, that we can start working on that.
Okay, next question to my co-host, Mark Vargas.
Enrique, we're seeing a very dangerous pattern, not just with Roger, but in your case and so many others of, the lying and cheating and manipulating. If you say this, we'll do this. A lot of quid pro quos. It explains why President Biden pardoned everybody on the January 6th committee, because these lies were not exposed during that fraudulent committee. So that everyday average Americans begin to see this repeated pattern of the corruption of the Biden administration. How did you maintain your sanity in all of this? Where did you draw your strength from when you knew that they were playing these games to try and back you into a corner using lies and false misinformation?
Well, through Jesus Christ, all things are possible. So that was the first. That's what kept me going. Second was my beautiful family, starting with my mother, fiance. They kept me grounded. And the third was the president, the future president at that point of the United States. I knew that he is a person that keeps his promises, and I knew he was a person that saw the corruption and witnessed the corruption, because it's not just me and Roger that went through it. The president went through it. The president went through the corrupt system. The president got indicted by the corrupt Jack Smith. I hope they put him in chains as they did to me and a lot of my friends. They wanted us to rot in prison for the rest of our lives. The 22-year sentence isn't like a 2-year sentence or a 1-year sentence or months in prison. Not to say anything about the plight of some of these J6ers that have had to go through this and got that much time, but 22 years is a life sentence. And I knew in my heart that I wasn't going to serve it one way or another. The Supreme Court came through for us. And said that the obstructing official proceeding charge that we had, which was one of the biggest charges that we had, they threw that off the table because it was illegally used by the Justice Department. So what kept me alive was hope, but there's a lot of people that didn't have that hope. And even after the pardon, they're having a very, very hard time readjusting to society. And those people are people that I'm reaching out to because we've been through a lot. We've been through hell and back for our country, for our president, for our God, and for our families. And given the chance to go through it again, it was worth it. It was worth it to expose how corrupt the system is.
Enrique, I'm curious about the conditions of your incarceration. What was it like in the DC Gulag? Did they move you to other facilities? I mean, did you have what was it like? I mean, tell us about physical conditions.
So the most nefarious thing about this whole situation is how easily one can get adapted to it. I was moved. I probably have high score. I was moved to 40 different facilities. Sometimes I'd sleep in one prison, get transferred to another. They had me on what was called diesel therapy and this medieval torture device called box cuffs. Your viewers can go ahead and after the show, Google what they are. It doesn't let you move your hands in either direction. You can't twist your wrists. It's strapped to a leather belt. So 26 hours at a time. Even the UN, God, I hate that I'm quoting the UN, but even the UN says that prisoners should only be in these box cuffs for 4 hours maximum. I was in there for 26 hours, urinating in a Gatorade bottle. It was bad. It was really bad. But the reason why I can't tell you that it was as bad as I'm making it sound is because, again, the nefarious thing about it is you get so used to it. And another thing that kept me going was the hope, but the conditions were bad. The food was horrible. I got punched in the face for asking a question at the penitentiary in Atlanta. I was in some of the worst, and I was actually the last spot that I was in was actually the worst, most violent prison in the United States currently, which is out of Louisiana. They thought I was going to sink there. I swam again, but hope is what kept me alive. But the conditions were bad. The BOP needs reform. The director needs to be fired, and we need to put somebody that's competent in their place.
So how much of your time incarceration was in solitary confinement?
My almost my entire time. I think the only out of the 3 years that I was in, I think only about like 8 to 9 months was I at what the BOP calls a designated facility, where I'm in general population. But for about 2 years and change of my life, I was alone, in a concrete box, no books, no phone access. Uh, there was 3 weeks there that I went without a shower, without toothpaste, without toothbrush. My teeth are all screwed up. I went to the dentist yesterday. It's going to take a while to fix it. My dentist was very surprised at how bad it was. But I spent my entire time in solitary confinement. Uh, and just nobody, uh, unless you've went through it, nobody knows how mentally exhausting silence is, because you wouldn't be able to hear anything, not a pin drop. I remember, um, the cart that they come by and bring your food to, that would wake me up at night, because I would I was so used to the quiet that just the smallest sound would wake me up. So it was pretty bad.
I read Paul Manafort's book, which is a very compelling book. They moved him constantly from prison to prison to prison to prison, sometimes sleeping on a wet cement floor, uh, being given food laced with cleaning chemicals or maggots or feces in some cases. Uh, uh, how were did you find that others who were incarcerated at the same time were treated the same way?
No, even I had no incident reports. I was pretty much a model inmate. I taught classes when I was at my designation. So the people that get put, it's called the SHU, the segregated housing unit. They're not there for more than 10 to 15 days. I was there for 2 years. Obviously jumping from prison to prison, so I wasn't at the same one, but usually the max that they put you in there is for 10, 15 days. And that's usually if you do something egregious like stab somebody. So uh I was treated very differently by the BOP. I'm currently looking at what actions I could take civilly against them, because somebody has to. And it's not just me. I don't want to talk about me. There was a lot of people that went through this. Maybe not as bad with with being in transit, but there has to be some form of hate using this word because I never thought I'd use it in my case, is reparations of some sort. Um, but yeah, we weren't treated like other inmates. We were treated like scum, like the scum of earth. I was labeled a domestic terrorist by the BOP, which also has a lot of uh, consequences when it comes to communicating with my family, getting visits, and things like that. Um, so it was, if we're looking for equality, there was none. J6ers are treated worse than the worst criminals, even child molesters and child pornographers, which are protected by the BOP.
Yeah, I mean, the conditions in the DC prison violate the Geneva Conventions. We don't
Yeah.
even treat we don't even treat international terrorists as badly as we've treated the January 6th detainees. Next question to Mark Vargas. Mark?
Enrique, you bring up an interesting point because I've been told by several that there was a directive to BOP officials to treat J6ers differently and to treat them horribly, actually, and to a treatment that saw rapists and murderers and predators receiving better treatment because this was a directive. You hit on this point a little bit, but there's got to be some repercussions for this and investigations that there was a directive ordering officials to treat you so bad on a scale that we haven't really seen before. I mean, this isn't the United States of America. This is a third world. This is Venezuela or North Korea, and we've got to fix this.
Yeah. Um, I believe investigations should be our retribution. They should be investigated. There was that poor treatment, and it was a directive. You're 100% right. I got told that by a bunch of case managers, unit managers, and counselors that they've never seen a file like mine come to their desk. And I was put in some of the, again, I was put in some of the worst prisons. So these case managers and counselors see the worst of the worst of criminals, and even them, they're like, wait a second, I literally had points to be at a prison camp, which which to be honest isn't a bad place to be if you did something wrong. um but somehow they put me in the highest security of prisons. I mean, the next step beyond where I was getting put under a mountain like a Chapo Guzman. um and the only reason they couldn't do it is because they legally couldn't do it because I'm an American citizen. But if they could, they would have. And literally, there you don't leave your cell at all, and everything gets carted in. But I saw stabbings every day. I've seen people die of heart attacks. They're sitting there by the time the officers at the prison, and I'm going to be specific, at the penitentiary in Atlanta, by the time they pull these people out, they're stiff as a board. It looks like they're pulling out a piece of plywood out of a cell, and that's a human being. I've seen people get stabbed in the neck. Um, it's 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 pretty bad.
It is a testimony to your faith and your resilience and your strength that you're even with us today. So, Enrique, you were a political activist before you were jammed up. I do want to make one thing clear. Were you in Washington, D.C. on January 6th?
No, I was ordered by a judge to not be in the district, and I complied with those orders. And I was out of the district when that happened. I didn't have a phone, so I had no communication whatsoever. And I didn't really worry about it. I was like, okay, whatever. I don't need to communicate. My guys are going to it to watch the president speak, and that's it. So it's not like I was expecting anything to happen. I'm like, okay, well, I've seen the president speak a million times. One less time wasn't gonna affect me at all. I did comply with those orders lawfully, and swiftly.
I just want to make this very clear for my viewers. Were you at the Capitol on January 6th?
No, I was not. I was in Baltimore, Maryland while it was happening, and I found out about the events on January 6th like you guys did. I saw it on TV. Um, Actually, you guys probably knew what was going on at the Capitol before I was, because I didn't turn on the TV till a little bit later after it happened.
I want to make this very, very clear. Did you order or instruct or suggest to anybody that they go to the Capitol and break into the Capitol on January 6th?
Just to be clear, I did not. And then on top of that, a lot of people don't focus on this. The president was speaking while the first, I guess you call it a breach, while the first breach happened. So it's not like what Jack Smith was accusing him of fomenting this crowd to go do that, because he was still speaking. So all these comments that we've seen that were honestly not bad comments happened after the breach of the Capitol. But I did not order anybody before, during, and or after. I didn't, and specifically during, I didn't have a phone. So who am I going to call? Who am I going to tell, hey, go in there? I think it was like 2 hours later that I finally got a phone in my hands. I went to AT&T and got a phone, and I posted, before I talked to anybody, I called my mom, and I posted on my social media accounts. Am I guilty of celebrating what happened that day? Yes. Is that a crime? Absolutely not. But the fictitious story that they concocted about, you told people to go before that, you planned it. They alleged that I planned it before the event was even announced before they even went as far as to say that I planned it before the election actually happens.
Favorite technique is guilt by association. Pulled together a bunch of newspaper headlines. Roger Stone seen with members of the Proud Boys. Roger Stone seen with members of the Oath Keepers. I made it very clear that I felt that I needed a security detail. There have been a lot of threats on my life. All the off-duty DC police officers that I sought to hire who had attended me and my family during my trial there were unavailable. The organizers of the legally permitted rally that I spoke to on the 5th offered me a security detail from the Oath Keepers. Because they were not allowed into the lobby of the hotel because of COVID restrictions, and because the weather was like a cold sleet, they were all wearing ski masks. I couldn't even tell you their names. I know one of them, Joshua James. It was reported that Joshua James was in my hotel suite. No, Joshua James brought my suitcase up to my hotel room and dropped it off there. I didn't actually see him. Now, when Joshua James testified in New York under oath in the administrative trial of New York police officer Salvatore Greco, he said under oath that Roger Stone knew nothing whatsoever about the Oath Keepers' activities on January 6th. It was never discussed. But they pressured him too to try to lie. It is, we have a severely corrupted judicial system. And I hope that what happened to you will stand out as an example to people of how corrupt this regime has been. Donald Trump is, I think, working to clean up that system at breakneck pace. I was delighted to learn yesterday that J.P. Cooney, who's the prosecutor in my case, was fired. Now, Mr. Cooney is well aware of the fact that Judge Amy Berman Jackson withheld exculpatory evidence from my defense attorneys during trial. My lawyers moved for the entire unredacted Mueller report. In America, you're entitled to see all evidence against you. It's in the Constitution. But Judge Jackson said that she would review the report and give my lawyers those sections that were relevant. Strangely, she left out the section in which Mueller says, he can't even sugarcoat it, that he found no evidence of Russian collusion or WikiLeaks collaboration. In fact, he said that the barriers to my prosecution were factual, meaning he couldn't find any factual basis for them. He even concluded that if he had found that I was in touch with WikiLeaks and had received materials, that would not have been, and disseminated them, that would not have been a crime. They had that redacted, and it is only because BuzzFeed, thinking that the unredacted report would be damaging to me, sued the Justice Department for its release. And Mark, you'll love this. They released it at midnight on Election Day of 2020, the busiest media day of the world, to make sure that it got no coverage. You can look for it in the New York Times or the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, but you won't find it because it's never been reported. It was reported by the Gateway Pundit. It was reported by Zero Hedge, although for some odd reason they've taken it down. So J.P. Cooney deserved to be fired. Frankly, I think he deserves to be disbarred because he knew that the government had evidence of my innocence, which they denied us at trial. Federal judges are hard to impeach. That doesn't mean I won't get a motion to impeach her going in the Republican House. Enrique, what are your plans from here? I know that's a hard question. You're still decompressing. You and I are going out tomorrow night for a little picadillo, maybe some plantains, maybe some maduros. I'm looking forward to some maganga, as we call it. But we'll be in Hialeah for dinner, and I'm looking forward to seeing you and embracing you as my Christian brother. And I give you great credit for the fact that they squeezed you to testify against President Trump. You wouldn't do it. They squeezed you to testify falsely against me, and you wouldn't do it. I think you were to be lauded for your character. I went through that myself. They wanted me to testify against President Trump. They said, you're going to die in jail. We'll file superseding charges against you unless you sign this. And what they wanted me to sign was a lie. I wouldn't do it. So you're a man of courage. You're a man of fortitude. I know you found solace in the Lord when you were in there. This is an interesting question. Paul Manafort writes in his book that they wouldn't allow him to have books with one exception. They allowed him to have a Bible. Would they let you have a Bible when you were incarcerated?
Sometimes. I mean, it's that I move so much that it's hard. When you ask for one, it takes a couple days to get you one, but by that time I'm already somewhere else. To touch on a couple things that you said, I learned from the best, so there was no way that I was going to lie about what happened on January 6th. I wasn't going to implicate anybody because I was only going to say the truth. And you're a brave man because you had, if not one of the most corrupt judge in the DC area. I recently had a chance to testify in the defense of a very, very good police officer, and she was a nasty woman, and on top of being a nasty woman, just outside of just being a corrupt person, I had to sit next to her, and honestly, she smelled so bad. She smelled like a nursing home. But
It's that smell of sulfur, I think, is what you're thinking about. Look,
yeah,
the judge, she was amazing. She would take things under advisement, go to her chambers, and return with a 45-page opinion, which she
yeah.
had just written, of course. She was completely controlled by her clerks. They hated me. You could see it, the look on their face. It's amazing in D.C. how I had a jury that had not a single military veteran, not a
Mhm.
single non-Democrat, except for one Green Party member. A number of veterans of the Clinton administration, Justice Department, and FBI, member of veterans of the Obama administration, because the judge ruled that their previous political appointees would not eliminate them for consideration to be a juror in my case. And of course, the jury forewoman testified during jury selection. She had no idea who I was. She knew nothing about my case. She had never heard of me. But we learned later that she'd been attacking me and President Trump by name regarding the very case in which she was selected as a juror on Twitter and Facebook for 19 months prior to being selected a juror in my case. But she had those postings on a privacy setting, so they couldn't be found in due diligence. Judge Napolitano, I think Jonathan Turley, the George Washington University law professor, both said she should have been prosecuted, but of course she won't be. All right, we're going to let you go, Enrique Tarrio. Thank you for joining us. Look forward to getting together with you tomorrow night for a little cerveza and a little relaxation and a little celebration. Thank you very much, my friend.
Thank you, Stone. Thank you, Mark. Thank you guys. Thank your audience. I appreciate you guys. The Stone Zone's the best.
All right, God bless you. Here is an update, a mark on Jeremy Brown. Jeremy Brown, you may know, is a Master Sergeant Green Beret. Like Enrique Tarrio, although he was in Washington, he never entered the Capitol. He never assaulted a police officer or anyone else. He never destroyed any public property. He did prevent a woman from being trampled to death. But Jeremy Brown had refused a demand by the FBI to become an informant. And he taped the 2 times they approached him, legally, by the way, demanding he become an informant. He was pardoned by President Donald Trump, along with many others, yet he is still incarcerated. He was moved from the DC jail at 5:15 a.m. the morning before yesterday. Here's a text I received from his lawyer late last night, his lawyer, Carolyn Stewart, says Jeremy was moved out of the Kentucky jail they had moved him to, allegedly headed to Atlanta FCI. The only communication was from a cellmate who had texted me about them moving him. A federal prisoner search now online show that he is not even listed in the Bureau of Prisons custody. Typical marshals keeping J6ers incommunicado. No idea if they are parking Jeremy in Atlanta or continuing to move him somewhere else, such as Oklahoma soon. We are pushing the DC marshals and the prison for more information. That is the latest on Green Beret Jeremy Brown. Because he refused to be an informant, they went to a DC magistrate to order a search of his Florida home. Notice they didn't go to a Florida magistrate. And it's quite clear that they planted evidence or planted World War II vintage grenades that were not live and weapons that were quite legal for him to own in his home. Also, some cassette that they claim had classified information. All of it bogus, by the way. No fingerprints of him on the tape, no fibers, nothing. So our folks, our friends out there, we need to continue to pray for Jeremy Brown. The U.S. District Attorney in D.C. is on this. They're seeking to bring these rogue U.S. Marshals and Bureau of Prison officials accountable. The pardon very clearly says that the pardon pertains to any January 6th related crime. The search on his home comes only because of his involvement on January 6th. He is legally supposed to have been released. This is the worst kind of torture that I can imagine. So, my friends, those out there in our audience, please continue to pray for justice for Jeremy Brown. We're not going to rest on this show until he's released. Mark, J.B. Pritzker is back in the news, one of your favorite guys. I don't want to say that J.B. Pritzker's fat, but this guy has his own zip code. He says that he will not cooperate with Tom Homan in his effort to remove illegal criminal aliens from Illinois. What do you have to say about this?
Well, this is no surprise. I mean, J.B. Pritzker, after all, is Illinois' 450-pound health czar, because during the pandemic, he kept lecturing Illinois residents about how to live healthy lifestyles. Again, the irony coming from a man who makes Oprah look like a health specimen, right? But at the end of the day, J.B. Pritzker, the irony of all of this is J.B. Pritzker welcomed these most vicious and violent and dangerous criminals into the city of Chicago as a sanctuary city, rolled out the red carpet, made sure that taxpayer dollars gave them health care, clothes, food, housing. They were living lifestyles better than his own residents in the south and west side of Chicago. Then he goes on CNN, low-rated CNN, and says, well, we need to send those people back. Well, first of all, how did they get there? Because you welcomed them. But the fact that he's trying to say, now I'm not going to cooperate, Roger, he's putting fear into everyday people's lives. Schools now are issuing statements that they will not allow ICE agents onto their property to rip children out of their classrooms. I mean, this fear factor that they're going to go into your home and rip your grandmother as she's knitting a sweater, rip her out of her rocking chair, or that single mom who's trying to provide for her children, rip her out of the home is a total lie. Homan has made it clear we're only right now going after the violent and dangerous criminals, sexual predators, men that abuse women and children, rapists, murderers. But clearly, J.B. Pritzker, who's trying to build a national platform because he thinks he can run for president, clearly he's trying to spew these lies once again, yet he hasn't learned anything in November when Donald Trump gained 600,000 more votes, got more votes than J.B. Pritzker in 2022 for his reelection, and flipped very blue Democratic wards in the city of Chicago, flipped them red.
You know, I don't want to say J.B. Pritzker is fat, but I met him on the corner of 32nd, 33rd, and 34th Street. You know, this guy is a disgrace. a billionaire who bought the governorship. Mark, I want to ask you one other thing. A lot of talk about former Governor Rod Blagojevich running for mayor. Chicago is on fire. The current mayor, perhaps the most incompetent mayor in Chicago history, blames all of the city's rising crime problems on Richard Nixon. Richard Nixon, the president who desegregated the public schools, the president who gave us affirmative action, the president who formed the Office of Minority Business Enterprise, the president who increased by 9 times funding for Black colleges, the president who, as vice president, rounded up the votes for the passage of the 1958 Civil Rights Bill, the president who increased by 4 times funding for civil rights enforcement in his Justice Department. That Richard Nixon. It is this guy is kind of out to lunch. I've read that the stress of the job has hospitalized him a couple times. No,
More than a couple times, over a dozen times, as reported by various Chicago media outlets for, get this, panic attacks. And so not only does he have the lowest approval rating of any mayor in history at it's below 14%, but it's also encouraged state legislators in Springfield from his own party to introduce legislation to create a mechanism to recall the Chicago mayor. So he remains widely unpopular. The city is crumbling. Businesses are fleeing. Residents are leaving by the hundreds of thousands, taking with them taxes and economic development. But yeah, Governor Rod Blagojevich, a very dear friend of the both of ours and of the StoneZONE, I think he'd make a tremendous mayor, and many people are saying that too. But Roger, to show the corruption once again of Democrats and of the establishment, they passed a law when they kicked him out of office, impeached and removed him. They passed a law barring Rod Blagojevich specifically from running for office in Illinois. So Rod can run for president, but he can't run for school board. He can run for U.S. Senate, but he can't run for alderman. He can run for U.S. Congress, but he can't run for Chicago mayor. And a presidential pardon from President Donald Trump would clear the decks and would allow Governor Blagojevich to run for office in Illinois again. And I'm telling you, Roger, you know this, I know this, and people that know him know this, that he said, I've got one more election in me. And I have no doubt, given the reception that he receives in Chicago whenever he goes out to a restaurant or when he goes into the South and West Sides and meets with families and criminal justice reform advocates, there's no doubt in my mind that he would win that election.
I have said this before. I think Rod Blagojevich is one of the most talented political leaders I've ever met, an extraordinarily talented communicator with an incredible record of fighting for the middle class as governor. He was one of those old-time Democrats who opposed tax increases and who cut spending, yet provided health care, broadened health care to those who didn't have it, provided pap smears to women, for example, a very impressive record as governor. But he's a throwback to the Democrat Party of John F. Kennedy and Harry Truman. And yes, Richard J. Daley Sr., one of the great mayors of Chicago, back in the days when Chicago was known as the city that worked. I'm hopeful that President Trump will, who commuted Rod's sentence when he was persecuted and sent to prison. He did 8 years, essentially for refusing to put Valerie Jarrett in the U.S. Senate seat vacated by Barack Obama. That was his crime. Rod was convicted of engaging in the act of politics. And the most outrageous thing is they convicted him on the basis of wiretap tapes that they refused to play in court for a jury. And a judge actually upheld that travesty by the prosecutors in his case. If I had a T-shirt right now, it would say Rod Blagojevich did nothing wrong. He has what I admire most about him is 8 years is a long time in stir. but it didn't break him. He's not a bitter man. He's not the slightest bit bitter. He will tell you he was sustained by his faith. And I think he was quite possible. He was very, very popular in the prison because he helped other inmates cope with their problems. And he's always been a strong advocate for Jesus Christ. And he does not seem at all damaged to me. I could see how a man could be damaged doing 8 years in prison for a crime that he did not commit. I just have a feeling that his greatest public service really lies ahead. We got a couple videos here we're going to show you. Tim Walsh, you remember him? He's the guy who said J.D. Vance was weird. Really. He's out now with the latest false news narrative being promulgated by the Democrats regarding the spending freezes. Here's Tim Walsh. Let's take a look.
Donald Trump's reckless action cut off funding to law enforcement, farmers, schools, child care, veterans, and health care. While he was out golfing, he threw the country into crisis. This is not bold. It's not leadership. It's stupid, buffoonish, childish of exactly what they did. Child care providers across the state, law enforcement, our prisons, things that we count on. Individuals on Medicare, things that we know matter to people's lives. And I want to be very clear about this. Minnesota is a state that pays far more into the federal government than we get back. Those are our dollars that he is stealing unconstitutionally. Congress, as I served, as Attorney General Ellison served, appropriates the dollars. This is so far beyond the pale to try and pull these dollars back. And the real thing about this was he has no idea. I understand this. Donald Trump has no idea the implications on this.
Every single word of that is a lie. Every single word. Stephen Miller was on CNN last night. I give him credit for going into the belly of the beast, and he made it clear that every single word of that is a lie. Tim Walsh also says that President Trump is trying to rip out fundamental things like child care and health care that working people rely on every day. Yet another lie. This guy is the gift that keeps on giving. And you talk about weird. That's weird right there. Sorry. Lastly, I have to play this. Tom Homan doing an amazing job, doing exactly what President Trump pledged that they would do, rooting out the most violent criminals and illegals, people with criminal records, people who are responsible for heinous crimes here or in their countries of origin, and deporting them. He had this to say about Joy Reid.
Governor who's confirmed as a Department of Homeland Security. I mean, it's as she's cosplaying. It's almost a game where she seems to be cosplaying, as I'm not sure what she thinks that she's portraying here. She might as well be at Comic-Con.
James and Joy say you're reckless and you're just role-playing for fun.
She's dumber than a box of rocks.
You know, if Joy Reid's IQ was 1 point lower, you'd have to water her like a plant. This is just to remind you, a woman who said that there were no shots at Donald Trump in Butler, Pennsylvania, that he bit a blood capsule to simulate blood, but there was no assassination attempt on Donald Trump in Butler, Pennsylvania. She's literally mentally deranged. She also said in 2016 that I'm the one who told Trump that he should cozy up to Vladimir Putin and the Russians. I don't think Donald Trump and I have ever discussed Russia on any occasion. The woman is mentally ill. I think that's obvious. I didn't like it when she dyed her hair blonde. I thought that was cultural appropriation of my culture. I found it very, very offensive, Mark. We got just a few minutes to go here. Folks, with the JFK assassination documents about to be declassified, there's over 5 million pages regarding the assassination attempts on JFK, RFK, and Dr. Martin Luther King. I strongly recommend you grab a copy of The Man Who Killed Kennedy, The Case Against LBJ, my New York Times best-selling book, because it will help you put those new revelations, those no disclosures, into some context. You can get your book by going to themanwhokilledkennedy.com, themanwhokilledkennedy.com. If you choose to buy it elsewhere, please get the paperback version. Has 3 extra chapters. I think you will enjoy it. But my book, I signed them as well. My book will put what you're about to hear in context because there is indeed a plot to kill John F. Kennedy. It does include the CIA. It does include organized crime. It does include Big Texas Oil. It does include the international banks, but it is Lyndon Baines Johnson, the man who has the most to gain. And because he's under federal investigation and about to be dropped from the 1964 ticket and most likely sent to prison, he has the most to lose. So I urge folks to grab a copy of that. I think it's going to be a couple weeks before these disclosures are made. If you want to be able to put it all in context, I think my book will help you do that. Now, Mark, I expect these new revelations to largely cement the CIA's role in the murder of Kennedy. And then just days ago, Alex Jones released an audio tape between Cliff Carter, the executive director of the Democrat National Committee and the right-hand political man of LBJ, and Johnson crony Billy Sol Estes, who went to prison for corruption with Johnson. Johnson, of course, would never face charges, but in which they talk openly about the fact that LBJ hired a man named Malcolm Mac Wallace to kill John Kennedy. As I think I've said on the show, and we've discussed, there are more than one shooter. There may be as many as 4, but there's little doubt now that Johnson's role between the fingerprint evidence of Wallace on the 6th floor of the Texas School Book Depository and the shocking new audio tape, Johnson's role has been proven. These new revelations are going to prove the CIA's role in the plot. This is going to be very exciting. It's time for the American people to know, so folks can get their copy of my book. I want to thank Mark Vargas, the publisher and editor of the Illinois Review, for jumping in with us today at the last minute. We're glad to have you, Mark. Tell folks where they can see the stuff that you're writing.
Well, thank you, Roger, and I'll drop anything to join you here on the Stone Zone. But they can follow us on X at Illinois Review, ILLINOIS Review, and you can also follow us at IllinoisReview.com, the largest conservative, pro-Trump, pro-MAGA news publication, not just in Illinois but in the Midwest.
We're out of time. I want to thank you for joining us today on the Stone Zone. Remind you, you can see us at worldviewtube.com every day at 4 o'clock Central, 5 o'clock Eastern. But if you miss that, you can see us at Rumble at 8 p.m. by going to rumble.com/Roger Stone. Until tomorrow, God bless you and Godspeed.
A man who's gone through hell, but he's kept going, and he's smart and he's strong, and people love him. Not everybody, but people love him and respect him. Roger Stone. Where's Roger Stone?